Well, there's always a conversation that we need to have. Currently we have inflation pegged at 40.4%. But if you look at the latest statistics coming from the Statistical Service, there's every indication that the prices of regular foods, as well as even services, have increased astronomically in excess sometimes of over 100%, 200%. And this has been experienced over the last 6 weeks. This also means that people are reeling under the present conditions as we have them, but also having a toll on mental health. How do we make sure that we are very productive as workers, we're very productive as people who domestically will have to go through our own family issues daily? And so how do we get the best out of ourselves? So we want to have this conversation as TV3 New Day, put all these matters into perspective. So we have a clinical psychologist, he's also a lecturer with University of Ghana Medical School. And we have Seth Mausi Asafo. Good morning to you, Dr. Asafo.
Hello, good morning, Roland.
Yeah, great. You and I haven't had this conversation apart from last year, but I know that the ERP conversation, you were able to do that this year, hopefully. I know that you hosted it, but because you are in the field, we need to put all these into tranches. Do you observe that people are reeling negatively in relation to their mental health as far as the economy is concerned? Yes. And how is that? How excessive is that?
Well, I would say that beyond even the current economic situation, we started noticing an increase in mental health decline, especially in the period of COVID and after COVID, because obviously we all went into a state of change, and that brought about a lot of stress for many, many people. Now, in recent times, we definitely have had an increase. So, for example, I will speak from my personal experience with my clients who seem to be experiencing some more significant symptoms as a result of the situation they are facing or the hardships they are going through. And most of them explain it in the context of the hardship. But we tend to capitalize and make all these, we talk about them in terms of stress. Now, in terms of explaining what stress is, stress really is any demand that we feel overwhelmed by. And so anything that's overwhelming definitely sets your body onto an alarm mode. And the alarm mode can go on for months to years and offset all the other systems. And that's what usually opens people up to some challenges such as this.
At what point in time do we need to realize that there are difficulties, and who needs to be noticing some of these cues? What are also the cues in terms of, let me just break down the question. What should we be seeing in people to know that people are distressed?
Well, everybody experiences stress differently, so it won't be one thing, but there are a number of key indicators that obviously help. It seems to run across. So, for example, sleep as a very significant thing tends to decrease for lots of people or increase across board for lots of other people. Because you're consistently worried or thinking or that you're in a state of anxiety or you're uncertain about the future. And so that uncertainty translates into a fear that sparks on your body's what we call alarm or response system. That together with many other symptoms like not being able to concentrate at work, school, being on edge and easily angered, agitated, having unexplained aches and pains all over, which in many cases can even further exacerbate your anxiety, because when you are not able to explain why you're having these pains and you go to a hospital and they say there's nothing wrong with you, then it gets you to worry even more. But those are usually psychosomatic in nature. So there are many levels of things that happen for people to experience symptoms that they're not well. We're looking for usually sudden changes, and we're also looking for things that are impairing their functioning. So have they become less productive? Are they not able to do the things that they typically were able to do? Are they able to maintain their interpersonal relationships? So we're looking at all, we use the word diagnosis reservedly. So these will come together for us to make sense of whether somebody is struggling or declining from a mental health perspective.
Okay, so at what point in time can we then say that people would need some redress or perhaps some help?
Everybody would need help. Even beyond all these economic changes and crises that we face, stress as a concept is inevitable. I mean, we can never do away with it. We can, however, say that it's become more exacerbated. We can say that it's become more exacerbated in the past couple of months, looking at the situations that we find ourselves in. But in the same regard, I want us to understand one significant factor, which is that most of the time, the stresses we face is as a result of us thinking futuristically. Okay, so for example, you're looking at your current situation and then you're sort of making an assumption of that same situation staying the way it is into the future. Now, every time you take the resources of the present and you translate it into the future, you're always going to be overwhelmed because it may never seem adequate. So for now, what I keep telling most of my clients or every forum I get, I say, stay in the present. All we actually do have is a day at a time. If you push yourself more into the future, then you're more likely to develop stress-related conditions, feeling extremely low, that sometimes could lead to a depression, feeling anxious because not knowing if you'll be able to meet the demands of tomorrow or meet the demands of the family, etc., etc. But if you do stay in the present, because actually that's what you can control, then you have a better way to allow your mind to think clearly. Now, this is interesting that most of the time when we are stressed, we're not able to process as much as we want to, or we're not able to think, or our thinking becomes impaired, especially if this is perpetual or it keeps going on and on and on. So, yeah.
Right. Which category of people, workers, and especially knowing that you deal with categories of workers and the mental health of people at the workplace, which category? Because I know that journalists, because we're usually poorly paid, we're more stressed, teachers and all that. So.
I mean, it will interest you to know that the amount of money you receive as salary or what you're paid does not, in all cases, indicate, or is not an indication of your stress and reading. Somebody may be paid very little, but they are able to adapt. And that's one thing that the human being and the human brain is able to do very well. Its ability to adapt to change. Now, remember that change as a concept registers as danger on the mind. And therefore, whenever you're faced with change, if you don't adapt to the change, at some point you become helpless in a process we call learned helplessness, which is our ability to think that we're unable to deal with the issue. Now, I'm not saying that it's all issues that we can control, but there are definitely things that we can control, and there are those that we cannot control. Paying attention to those we cannot control only makes it more difficult for us to control what we can.
All right. So what should we be doing then? At the home, in the offices, by the state?
Like I said, most important thing for us to do now is to stay in the present, where we say that one day at a time. Now, a very simple process that allows us to do this is to ask ourselves what life has been so far. Now, if you take a reflection, you might notice that you've been through some hard patches, but you've been able to make it through. In that process, your brain has built resilience, and you can draw on that knowledge to calm yourself down as you find innovative ways to get past the current hardship. For example, like I've noticed a lot of people have started carpooling as a way of mitigating the high fuel cost. So there's like they're taking turns to drive their cars with their colleagues, which is an innovative way to actually deal with that particular issue. So people are becoming more innovative.
Yeah.
With enough time, it will sort of balance off, and that's it. Necessity, they say, is the mother of inventions, and the human mind is consistently processing information to aid survival. So it is difficult, but the reality is, as we go on through these challenges, it opens up opportunity for people to become innovative, and that can actually also be positive.
Right, right. So as we get to adapt to the atmosphere and the system and the stresses, or how and well we're doing financially, you're saying that it's going to be better over time?
It will be better. Take COVID, for example. When COVID hit us, everybody was anxious.
Yeah.
We were so anxious that it was difficult. I mean, and during that time, even if you sneeze, people would say, stay back. Today, it's not the same because we were able to adapt past that. It was difficult for people to think, how am I going to transition to work? I mean, how am I going to work during COVID, especially during lockdown? But, you know, the world met up, gathered the resources, were able to do these things. So change can cause us to get very, very uncertain. And the uncertainty translates into anxiety, which also predisposes us to a range of mental health disorders. In fact, we'll tell you that the amount of substance-related disorders are increasing. So the use of alcohol and other drugs, to as it were, mask the challenges we have, which are just stopgap measures. It's just temporary. But the permanent things are always going to be there once the drug wears off. So these things are increasing and they could become addictive. In the recent couple of months, we've had a number of people who are definitely doing a lot of sports betting in extremes to the point that they're gambling away their resources, really.
Yeah.
And that is a problem because they're looking for avenues to as it were, cushion themselves or find a buffer against challenges that may or may not come.
Right.
So staying in the present can sometimes mitigate these for us.
Charlie, Seth Asafo, the way you speak, you're sounding like the president and the finance minister. This too shall pass. I love your laughter. Please distress for us. This too shall pass, right?
Yes. I mean, we have to help ourselves.
I know, right?
We control what we can and what we cannot control.
Yeah.
We live for another day.
Charlie, clinical psychologist, big English, great hope, and giving us great inspiration. And clinical psychology, that's all they do, just to prep our minds, prop us up, make sure that we're in the right frame of mind, and then tackle all the hurdles as we have it. And Seth Asafo is a clinical psychologist, also lectures at the medical school, helping us with some great conversation. And it's about the state of the economy, you know, all of us just grappling with whatever we can, because prices will keep changing either weekly or sometimes daily, or sometimes at a pace that you have no grip on, and just telling us that we need to just live today, live in the spur of the moment, have a grip on what we have today, and take it one day at a time, and this too shall pass. I borrowed the phrase same as I borrowed from the president and then also the finance minister.